thank you to Now Programs for making this special replay possible.
We first noticed Asher was having difficulties with learning when he was about 5. We ended up having him privately tested, and of course it came back that he was dyslexic. It was super overwhelming. Like there was just list and list of all these programs. So we started talking to people and felt like everybody was just saying something different. I hired the lady that had tested him. She tutored him for a year. One-on-one, 4 days a week. She came to me and was like, it's not working. Thankfully, she had met Dr. Conway. She just highly suggested the Morris Center. From there, my husband and I got in touch with the Morris Center, and Dr. Conway spoke with us over the phone, and you could just really tell his expertise in dyslexia.
Enroll your child or teenager at themorriscenter.com, or for virtual sessions, visit nowprograms.com.
Do you ever eat because you're bored, anxious, or excited? This is the Homeschool Sanity Show, the episode where we learn how to say goodbye to emotional eating so we can stay focused on homeschooling. I'm Dr. Melanie Wilson, Christian psychologist turned homeschool mom and curriculum author. And this is the podcast helping you wave goodbye to worry and say hello to a happy homeschool. Hey homeschoolers, the problem with emotional eating for homeschooling parents is twofold. We hate the consequences for ourselves, and we hate even more the example it sets for our kids. But how can we get past it? My guest for this episode will help us. Barb Raveling has joined me on the show before. I'll put links in the show notes. She is a retired homeschool mom, now a prolific Christian author you can learn more about at barbraveling.com. She has a soon-to-be-released book on this topic called Say Goodbye to Emotional Eating. Without delay, let's get to the interview because I know you'll appreciate Barb's tips. Barb, thank you so much for joining me again on the Homeschool Sanity Show. I am really excited to talk about this topic, emotional eating, because I know it is a real problem for so many people, me included. And so I thought we would start off our discussion about emotional eating by having you tell us what got you interested in this subject.
Well, I guess you could say I got interested in the subject by being really interested in emotional eating. Back when I was in, I don't know, maybe most of my life, but I can especially remember it in my teenage years. I started emotional eating right away. We had a lot of sweets around the house, and, I'd use it to relax or unwind, or if, I was going through something hard in my life. And especially like when I went to college, I used it to procrastinate. I gained a bunch of weight. And it's just one of those things that's been throughout of my life. If I have something hard going on in my life, my go-to is food. That's where I go to relax and unwind.
And, I asked you what got you interested in the subject, but I haven't had you define it for us yet. So I thought we could back up a little bit and have you tell us how you define emotional eating.
Okay. I would define emotional eating as letting your emotions determine when and what you eat, not your will. So instead of just eating when you're hungry or at meal times, we'll eat whenever we're emotional. So a lot of people, that's what they'll do. They'll just eat like a lot of Europeans are like this. They'll eat breakfast, lunch, supper, no snacking, and they make a big deal of making really good meals because they like eating together. Or other people are like, there's no reason to eat unless I'm hungry. But for the emotional eater, everything's a reason to eat. Even celebrations, holidays, vacations, we eat for our emotions. We don't have to be hungry. It doesn't have to be mealtime. So we're kind of in a eat what you want, when you want sort of lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. So we do eat out of emotion, but what is the problem with that? What are the effects of emotional eating on us?
Well, if I am only emotional like at meal times or when I'm hungry, then there's no effect, right? But if I'm emotional too often, I eat more food than is good for my body. So one of the effects is that, of course, we gain weight. It can affect our health. If you gain too much, I didn't realize actually when I first started writing on this subject. I wrote my first book on emotional eating back in 2008, and I teach locally. I didn't realize that most people who are overweight eventually get diabetes. It's just a very common disease that people get if you're a certain amount of overweight. So there's that. There's joint pain, stomach aches. You crave, like for me, I never had enough weight gain to have a lot of those health effects, but I was always craving it. And I'd always be thinking, what do I eat next? And so that's not a fun way to live. There's all those emotional things. And then the other one that's even more important is that we don't mature. So back in my emotional eating days, whenever I had a problem, I didn't work through it. I didn't try to figure out what to do on a practical level to change the things I needed to change to make life go more smoothly. I didn't work on my character. I didn't go to God for help, so I didn't grow close to Him. So emotional eating was what kept me emotionally immature, and it kept me immature, like even in procrastination and all those areas of my life that I wasn't naturally good at because I was just soothing over those things with food.
That's really important, I think, to recognize that. If we had an engine light come on our car, which our emotions are like that engine light, and if we just use that as an opportunity to go through the drive-through to get fast food instead of thinking, wow, I could have a problem with my car, I should have that looked at, I should look at that, we're just going to end up crashing in some ways. And I know I have absolutely crashed because of not paying attention to my emotions. So I am hoping that we have, and I don't think it will take very much convincing, but I am hoping that we have convinced our audience that emotional eating can be very dysfunctional for us. So if we agree with that premise that it can be dysfunctional, how can we overcome it, though? Because it is such a powerful habit, isn't it?
It's a powerful habit, and I also think it's in some ways it's almost like an addiction. It can feel impossible to get over. I thought it was that one thing in my life I would never get over, and I struggled with it for at least 20 years. Because when you're in the middle of feeling traumatized in some way, we don't have a lot of willpower. We just want to eat. And everybody says all you have to do is make a choice. But, in practice, I never felt like I had the strength to make a choice. It was controlling me hook, line, and sinker. So what I realized I had to do is I had to renew my mind if I wanted to break free from it. So the Bible says we're transformed by the renewing of the mind. And that works for all areas of our life, including emotional eating. So when I was emotional, I would do something I call truth journaling. I think I've already talked about it on your podcast before, where I'd write down what I was believing that was making me emotional. And then I'd write down the truth. And as I did that, those negative emotions disappeared. And it's so fascinating that once those negative emotions disappear, the urge to eat disappears. Like, it's really shocking how that works. So you can renew your mind either about the emotions, the situation that's making the negative emotions, get rid of the negative emotion, or the other option is to renew your mind about your desire to eat. So either we can get rid of the emotions, or we can get rid of the idea that eating is a good response to those emotions. And I actually have 100 renewing exercises in my new book, and most of them are directed towards I guess there's a lot directed towards both, but my Bible study, Freedom from Emotional Eating, is more about getting rid of the emotions. This new book is more about in that moment having the strength and the desire to say no, because all those renewing exercises will help with that.
Can you tell us more about the sections in your new book of renewing questions? I have found those renewing questions to be so powerful. It's like having a therapist or a coach sitting next to you and just asking these questions that just cut right to the heart of the issue. And I have found I don't have to read many of those questions before my desire to do something that I have committed to not doing just disappears. But can you tell us more about that?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'll tell you about the types of renewing exercises, because there are a few questions, but there's not that many sets of questions like I have on my I Deserve a Donut app. This one has scripture meditations, it has option charts, it has some other types of charts. Trying to think what else it has.
Do you have Bible study, Bible verses, verses to look up?
Yeah, I have. Well, I have little scripture meditations and Bible verses to look up, but I also have some lies. So for truth journaling, a lot of times people, when they truth journal, they're like, I don't know what I'm thinking. I can't figure out what I'm thinking. So I'll have the thoughts for them. So on those truth journaling pages, I'll have 5 beliefs, and then there's space for you to write down the truth for each belief. So anyway, those are the different types of things you'll find in these sections. But let me go through some of the sections. The first one is, I'm afraid to start. So what happens when we say, oh, I'm going to work on emotional eating, or a lot of times it's motivated by weight. We say, okay, I want to lose weight, so I'm going to start this weight loss program. Well, that can be scary, because especially if we've done it in the past, we might be afraid of failure, or we don't want to sacrifice again. We want to wait and start tomorrow. Or maybe we're afraid of what people will say, because people who love us, they're like, oh, there she goes again. So we're worried about that. So that whole section will get people started, in those initial days when it's so hard to start. And then I have a whole section. This might be the biggest section, and this is the one of, I don't feel like following my boundaries. So this will be when you're going through the day and you just really don't want to follow your boundaries. There might be cake in the house and you want to have a second or third piece, or you're on vacation. So there's all kinds of different reasons you don't want to follow your boundaries. So there's a whole section of exercises for that. And then the third section is I need chocolate. And this is the emotional eating section. So with this one, it has some renewing activities for when life is hard. So there might be some on worry there, some on annoyance, different emotions. So that'll be more of a little section on emotions. And then the next section is I have to be skinny. Now, this is interesting. When we feel like we have to be skinny, it actually makes us gain weight usually. I think back in the old days when I struggled with this and I'd have to go to a wedding or something, I'd think, oh, I have to be skinny for that wedding, right? And so I'd, go on a diet, try to be skinny. And the funny thing is I ended up gaining weight, not losing weight, because I didn't have the self-control to lose the weight. And then when I failed, I was an emotional eater. So that trial of trying to lose weight made me eat. So there's going to be questions that will help you learn, what? I'm acceptable even at this weight. So do I want to be healthier? Do I want to be at a healthier weight? Yes. But we still need to learn to accept ourselves at our current weight, because that's going to help us lose it. And then the last section is I'll never lose this weight. So all those renewing exercises are for times when you just feel like, oh, I'm just tired of this struggle. So you might have things like, I'll never get over this, or you're really sick of your boundaries, or you don't feel like renewing. So there's a whole bunch of different exercises in that section as well. So I've made the sections just because I still remember, even though I've kept my weight off now since about 2007, 2008, I still remember how hard it is. And, I'm still tempted from time to time, too, because a lot of times we'll lose the weight, we'll feel like, okay, I'm over this, and then we have a new trial in our lives. And if we're emotional eaters, that trial is going to make us want to eat. So sometimes you kind of have to go back to the learning board again and learn how to deal with that trial without eating. So it can be reoccurring, but if you do a lot of renewing, I haven't gained my weight back for all those years, so it's been enough truth to keep it off. But that doesn't mean I don't still go to God to help with all those other areas.
And so, that leads me to ask you, do you think it's possible for us to ever really be free from emotional eating, or is it something that we're going to have to keep practicing with the help of God for our whole lives?
I would say I don't think that you'll be 100% free, but if I look at the old me on a scale of 1 to 10 struggled with a 10's worth. Okay, it was something that totally controlled my life. the current me and the me that's been there for ever since 2008 struggles with it about a 2. So you go from a 10 to a 2. So a 2 is pretty easy to do as self-control. Like, I pretty much never renew my mind about food anymore. It's pretty consistent. So do I still struggle with it? Yeah, I'm still tempted to emotionally eat. Sometimes I do. But it's just not a big issue in my life anymore. Just a kind of a small one.
Well, I love that because it speaks to this black and white thinking that so many of us struggle with. You know, I'm either, horrible with emotional eating or I'm perfect with it. And of course, that's not reality. Most of us are going to be on that continuum, and recognizing that can help us prevent turning a little bit of emotional eating into a binge of emotional eating. So I love that you're reminding us of that.
Right. And I would say that's why it's really important to renew right away after you break your boundaries, because as soon as we break our boundaries, that black and white thinking makes us say, oh, I already broke them. I might as well keep eating, right? We use it as an opportunity to eat the rest of the days. But if you renew your mind right away, I'd say you have a 90% chance of not breaking them again. Depending on what time of day it is, sometimes in the beginning, the truth will only last for a few hours as far as changing your desires. You might have to renew more often, but it is surprising how much the Bible works. I mean, I have had women tell me, I can't believe this works. I mean, it actually changes your desires. But it's the Bible, it's the truth in action. It sets you free. It sets us free from life unto death, but it also sets us free from our unhealthy desires, from our sinful desires. It just sets us free in so many ways, but that's not like a pie in the sky sort of idea. That's a practical thing. So we have to spend time abiding in the Word, taking off our cultural perspective, putting on the biblical perspective, and that's what sets us free.
It also seems to me that many women I know, and I would include myself in that again, are very harsh with ourselves. And sometimes I feel like, okay, so I did some emotional eating. Sometimes I feel like I want to punish myself for doing that by doing even more.
Oh, yes.
And so can you speak to that a little bit? How does God's word and renewing our minds help us with that?
Well, I remember doing that all the time in college. So you start out using it as an opportunity. Oh, I break my boundaries. I might as well eat all this. But by the end of the day, you're eating all these things that you don't even like. You're just stuffing your face. And it does feel like you're just punishing yourself, and it's not even enjoyable. And so I think renewing also helps with that. At that point, we're usually thinking self-condemning thoughts. We're thinking, I'll never get over this. I'm so terrible. I have no self-control, all those kinds of thoughts. So we have to speak truth to those thoughts. Like, the truth is, okay, I don't have a lot of self-control in this area, but I have self-control in a lot of other areas of my life. And God can help me have self-control in this area. And when I'd say things like, oh, I'm such a failure, I'd say anytime I stop, it's a victory. So if I stop at 3 donuts, I could have eaten 10 donuts. So it's a victory anytime I stop. Let's make this a victory and let's stop. So there's just so much truth that you can speak to yourself in those situations. And that starts, making you realize, okay, yeah, I have faults, but everybody in the world has faults. Mm-hmm. Everybody. I think everybody has something that controls them, right? And we have to, accept that, and then, just keep. We want to accept it, but not accept it and say, okay, we're going to stay stuck in this the rest of our lives. Accept it and do the work we need to do, the spiritual work, to get out of it. And is there practical work too? Yeah, we can do some practical work. Like, one thing to say is, okay, what do I need right now? And what's the best way to get that need met? So that might stop us and we do something else on a practical level. Or sometimes we might need to just get out of the house. So like, if I'm super depressed or, something terrible is happening, I just sometimes need to get out of the house, get out of that situation, because that's going to help me. Or sometimes it's like, you can't get over it. You just have to say, tomorrow's going to be better. I mean, I remember that back when we had little kids and we had a bad day with all the kids being wild or whatever. It's like, okay, the next day is going to be better. And it's the same way emotionally. Every once in a while you have one of those days where you're just depressed or upset and you can't get out of it, but tomorrow's going to be better. But the earlier you can catch those emotions in the day, if you can renew early in the morning, then you'll be less likely to have one of those days, because it's the more we keep those emotions and don't work on them, they're in the back of our mind, and they just keep getting worse and worse and worse. So we want to work on those early if we can, but also acknowledge, you know what, sometimes we can't make ourselves do it. I write books on renewing the mind. I have days where I need to renew my mind, and I cannot make myself do it. That's life.
Right.
We're frail human beings.
Right. And we have God's grace.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, wonderful. I know my listeners are going to want to get a hold of your new book. Can you give us the title again and the best place to find it?
Okay, it's called Say Goodbye to Emotional Eating, and you should be able to find it anywhere books are sold. It will actually be out in audiobook as well. This will be my first audiobook, so you should be able to find that anywhere. It'll be available November 1st, but it is already available for pre-order as well.
All right. Wonderful. Yeah. Well, thank you, Barb. And I'm going to put the links where people can connect with you online in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for taking time to speak with us again. You know that you have been a huge help to me personally in my own spiritual and emotional growth, so I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you too. Melanie has done more for me than anybody in the area of productivity and just general help. I just so appreciate you. Yeah, too bad I didn't know you back when I was homeschooling my kids and had your curriculum. I would have loved to have that Grammar Galaxy curriculum for my kids, but unfortunately I didn't get to know Melanie until after my kids were done homeschooling.
Well, it was perfect timing, right?
Yeah,
just what God had in mind. Well, thanks again, Barb, and I look forward to talking with you again.
Okay, thank you, Melanie.
To pre-order Barb's book and claim valuable bonuses, go to saygoodbyetoemotionaleating.com. You can find the show notes for this episode at homeschoolsanity.com/emotional eating. Have a happy homeschool week. Thank you for joining me on the journey to Homeschool Sanity. I would love to continue the conversation. You can find me on social media at Homeschool Sanity. And if you haven't heard it lately, let me remind you, you're doing a great job. This has been a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network.